Welcome back to Athlete's Pursuit. Today we have a very nice guest, a good friend of mine. Beautiful episode. We're going to have some coffee while we do this. We're going to keep it very chill. You may notice that both of us are wearing Siegelman stable hats. We're big supporters of our boy Max Siegelman, who is crushing the game right now. And I'm very excited to have you here, sir. This is Scotty G. Scotty the Body is what I like to call him. This man consumes steaks on the daily. We're going to talk about his red meat intake, how to sous vide these bad boys. Absolute beast in the gym and great at what he does. He is a tax director at PwC. He used to play college football at Lehigh. This man seems to do it all while being married, performing at a very high level, staying in great shape, just an all-around great guy. So we're going to learn some things from Scotty G today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Is this your first podcast?
It is, yes.
In your entire life?
In my entire life.
Well, welcome.
I never thought I would have something that important to impart on anybody, so I'm excited to see where we go with it.
Man, you got some great things to talk about. I've been admiring you since I've met you, man. Me and Scott met at Tone House years ago. Let's say, what, 2018?
I think it was 2018, yeah.
But you've been going there. How long have you been training at Tone House?
Probably about 2017, 2018.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How did you find it?
A group of my friends at PwC actually were getting into kind of the fitness game. We all would go work out, do things together. We started out at Barry's. I kind of, what I would say is like lost my way on the fitness track where after college football and, I kind of just got disenfranchised with working out and lifting and you go from kind of a structured environment with teams and coaches and all of a sudden you have none of that. You've got no structure.
Dude, this is a very common struggle I hear with athletes.
Yeah.
Good place to start with you too. So let's go down the Lehigh football route, man. How did you even get into sport in general as a kid? Like, when did you get introduced to football?
I got introduced to football in 6th grade. I was playing baseball, basketball, and there she goes. Oh, you're just coming over.
We got Lena joining us today. Yeah, Lena? She loves Uncle Scott.
She's a good girl. Oh yeah, give me a little wink there. I was doing all the sports that basically like I probably shouldn't have been doing because I was too big.
What a problem to have. I was too beefy.
And I was playing basketball, fouling out of games because I was too physical. I was playing baseball, getting hit with the ball instead of doing the hitting. And
you were a problem.
I was playing soccer, and I got good at soccer, but I got red cards for running people over.
Were you slide tacking people?
No, I
just flat out running them over.
I ran them over.
Oh wow, you were built for football.
Built for football.
Okay.
It was like a locomotive train off the tracks.
It's like this isn't a tackle sport.
Yeah, I had refs
you're just flattening people.
Like, what did you just do? And I was like, well, I had the ball and you got my way. I saw the goal. I went to the goal. What, am I supposed to do something different?
Yeah, so man.
I had a family friend at the time come up to my dad and said, I think it's time Scott looks at contact sports. And what I mean by that
move that mic up a little bit. Let's get that up there.
What I mean by that is lacrosse and football.
Yeah.
So, first it was lacrosse, which I love because it's basically just like hockey in air and you just beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
And I loved it because all these kids were trying to beat the crap out of me, but I was twice their size. And so it didn't go well for them. And then I found football, and my problem then was I was too heavy.
How much did you weigh?
In 5th grade.
5th grade. Yeah.
I was 130 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And
how much facial hair did you have?
0.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
No, there were no roids in my protein shakes.
Okay, good. All right. Despite claims. Yeah.
Maybe. No. So I went out and I weighed in for Pop Warner, and general consensus is I think there was a weight limit for Pop Warner. Pop Warner is basically like football, but for light kids.
Yeah.
So I was fat shamed as a 5th grader.
Oh wow.
Which was great for the ego. And then I was like, all right, well I can't play football, so I'll play lacrosse. And then 6th grade rolled around, and a bunch of the dads in my area kind of band together and said, forget about Pop Warner. there's too much politics, too much nonsense. So they created a quote unquote fat boy football league. So I was first introduced to football in like probably 6th grade. And I kind of fell in love with it. I'd say between lacrosse and football, those were definitely my two passions, my love. And I just loved the physicality of the game. I loved the camaraderie. And I also love the team component of it where like, you on lacrosse, you've got 10 guys on the field. Football, you got 11 guys on the field. If one guy does not do his job,
Yeah.
your team's not functioning.
Right.
It falls apart. And that was something that like stuck with me where it was like, you could have 10 people out there kicking ass, doing a great time. But if one person is slacking off or just not doing their job, pulling their weight, it breaks down.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of first found my love for football. And then, fast forward, high school football, played at Jersey Public High School. I was the biggest kid on the team probably.
Seems to be a theme with you, just the biggest dude in the world. So how big were you freshman year of high school?
I think I was like 6'3", 220, 225.
You were 6'3", 220
Yeah.
as a freshman?
As a freshman.
As a freshman.
Yeah.
Just for comparison's sake, folks, myself, who is currently, move that mic up, Scott. It's drifted down on you, huh? It's his first day, but it's also a difficult stand. Yeah. There we go. So just for comparison's sake, myself, freshman year, I believe that I was 5'5", 115 pounds. So you were a house.
A brick shit.
And I'm currently 6'3", 235. So you are basically, were you full grown Scott in freshman year of high school?
Well, I would say full grown, but there was a lot of growing that had to do for college football, so I'll get to that.
Good Lord, man. God, you're a behemoth.
I would say like I'm very close to that size now. 6'3" has been my height since I was a freshman in high school. Basically between.
Good for you.
Oh, thank you.
Toned it down to get back to his freshman year stats.
Between I want to say 6th and 7th grade, I grew 7 inches in one summer.
Whoa.
So I kind of hit my peak height of like 6'3", somewhere in the 8th, 9th grade.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of growing in my body at that point.
Dang, man.
Because again, like I said, I was 5th grade, 130 pounds. I was a pudgy kid. I definitely was not the most coordinated. I just ran into things.
So what position did you go for early on?
Being a large kid in a Jersey public school, you kind of get automatically tagged to you're an offensive lineman and defensive lineman. And in hindsight, probably should have played linebacker given that my stature is not that of some of these larger guys in college. But I loved playing in the trenches. I loved like just battling Rams, like running into each other every play. And it taught me a certain grit. It taught me something, about like mental fortitude and toughness and, kind of like getting your head knocked in on every play and just grinding through that. And, I was one of those guys that like, you get your bell rung and you just laugh. You have a good time about it because it was like
You're
enjoyable.
a psychopath.
Just embrace the pain,
Dude, yeah, I remember people like you. When I was a freshman in high school at 115, I was playing football and I was pretty good in grade school and even junior high. And then everybody started to blow up like you. And I stayed small and I was getting my bell rung by people like you standing up going, woo! And I was like, yo, dude, this isn't a fair fight right now. Yeah, I was getting my butt kicked. All right, so, but real quick, you mentioned like you were getting a little bit maybe made fun of our hard time for being a little bit bigger, pudgier, like getting into your body. Like how did that mess with you at that age? And like, how did you kind of harness that?
Yeah.
That energy
was not easy. I mean, you're a 5th grader. You're very impressionable,
Yeah.
right? Like you got basically the whole school making fun of you for something. And, listen, like back then we didn't, as guys, you don't talk about body image. You don't talk about what it means to you psychologically to have people making fun of your body image or anything of that nature. And like, even to this day, like it's kind of like a taboo topic for guys to talk about like the internal monologue about their bodies and the struggles that they're going through. But for me, what I did is I kind of harnessed that energy, and I just said, you know what, like I'm gonna work harder, and that's kind of like my memo throughout my life is like when somebody's like either making fun of me or telling me I can't do something, I'm just like I'm gonna double down. And for me at that point was like I'm gonna train harder. And obviously I grew, like I said, 7 inches, grew into my body. I started personal training and working with folks back then, learning about what it meant to move weights, what it meant to move in a healthy manner. I was like 13, I think, and that's probably when I started lifting, my lifting journey.
Was it organized lifting?
Yeah, I actually worked one-on-one with a trainer. Shout out to Todd. That was my first trainer.
Okay. Yeah. That was your personal trainer.
Personal trainer.
Okay.
And then, then you get into like team-based training, which really didn't come into play until high school.
Right away? Freshman year? Did they jump in?
Jumped right into the weight room.
Okay.
And that's just like organized chaos. You got a whole bunch of, I'll call them like not fully grown men, but you got a whole bunch of like teenagers
learning their bodies,
jacked up on testosterone, learning their bodies, like making a lot of noise, throwing weights around the weight room.
Doesn't smell great either.
Not smell
it really, I remember that. It does not.
No. And the reality of it is most high school programs, you're just lifting weights, but you're doing it completely wrong.
Yeah.
Like you appreciate this.
I was there. Yeah.
You're benching with terrible form. You're squatting. You're maybe squatting like 50% of what you should in terms of depth, and like you're just putting on weight because it was a cool thing to do, and like everyone else was like, oh, I got to squat 500 pounds, I got to bench 350 pounds, whatever. Like
you're just excited, just pure excitement. My first time bench pressing, Scott, I hit myself in the forehead with the bar. It's a true story. I put on like 10 pounds plate. It's so embarrassing, man. I was like, I was again 115 probably soaking wet, and I just put on this 45-pound bar, which was already heavy, put on like 10-pound plates on each side. My spotter wasn't really helping me out, and I just like bring this bar down, and it had the ridges right in the middle, like deep ridges, the deep ones, man, and it went right into my forehead. And the rest of that day or week, I just had red dots, like a meat roller just went over my forehead, and I was like, this is a great look.
Listen, the badges of honor, we've all been there. I've dropped a few, squat, like had it completely fall off my back. Deadlifts, doing silly stuff there, and like bench. I think we've all done some stupid stuff with our grips where all of a sudden we hit ourselves in the forehead or we just drop the bar. So,
sure. Yeah.
But listen, like that's like your lifting journey. It's just all about like locking in and kind of building a healthy habit around that.
Yeah, it's not really like, it doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning. Yeah, I go back to even my first time like deadlifting, man. It wasn't great form. It looks pretty sloppy, and that steers a lot of people away sometimes. I get the intimidation with the gym, but I guess the point is you do have to learn. You can pay attention to great form, but like you got to start at some point.
Right. And I think that's like, especially nowadays, like back then we didn't have social media nearly as much as we do now.
Right. Not as much guidance.
Like not as much guidance, but it's not also a lot of noise. Like we didn't have a lot of noise. The only access we had to lifting was like people who had lifted previously in their lives. Like I had a coach who, was just a meathead junkie. And he was just like, all right, today we're going to pick shit up and put it down. Classic like Arnold lines,
which I love, fires me up. Yeah.
Love. But, at the same point, like we didn't have the access to the information. We had no idea, like, is this healthy lifting? Now you've got all that information at your fingertips, but you also got on the flip side of it, maybe too much information where, you've got people telling you to do 1,000,001 things because it looks cool. So I think it's like finding that balance of saying like, I want to build those healthy habits and just start lifting properly and commit to yourself and bettering yourself.
Nice, healthy outlook on that.
Thank you.
No, it's a nice long-term perspective. It's just that constant learning mentality of like, start where you are, pay attention, learn from people that have been doing this longer than you.
Absolutely.
Get yourself in the right environment. And that speaks volumes in and of itself. When you're around these people, you just get better by just being in the room itself. Because that's what we do, especially as men too. I think when you're in a group, especially that's where sports is just at its best, man. Yeah. You're being pushed and you're pushing yourself to a higher level where you're not even thinking about it. Like when you lift by yourself, I think it's harder to push yourself because you're just in your head trying to get yourself to another level. So it's a lot of thinking. And when you're just in the right room where you have a sequence and a plan and everybody just goes heads down, you don't think about it.
Absolutely.
It's just an energy thing.
Absolutely. And I think that's like one of the things that I enjoyed about college football, because like going from high school where you're the biggest kid, you go into college and you're not the biggest kid. Like I walked in and I was like, wow, I am small. And I had to gain 40 pounds between my senior year of high school and freshman year of college.
And what position were you playing senior year of high school?
I played utility. Basically, whatever was needed, I played. But primary was defensive end, left tackle, tight end, fullback.
Wow.
Yeah, I was swapping jerseys and all that, and that's just like a typical like high school thing where it's like, hey, like you're big, you could do a whole bunch of stuff. Like we're just gonna throw you out there, and I was like, okay,
That's fun, man.
loved it.
So how did you get noticed to get to Lehigh? Like how did that happen?
A lot of hard work. I had my freshman through junior year, I had a coach who did not believe in outside training, did not believe in having to do anything outside of the program. He was very much like, the recruiters will come, if you play hard and do well. And I was like, we haven't won a game in 2 or 3 seasons. Nobody's coming.
Oh no.
I was like, if we were a private school who have rosters full of college recruits, they'd come. But this is a school that, unfortunately, like we're a public school, we pride ourselves on academia, and there was no real history of college athletes or even pro athletes. I think the only pro football player that I'm aware of that we had was Billy Ard on the Giants. We hadn't had somebody since. And so for me, it was like, I need to carve out my own path. And for me at that time, I knew I had to get bigger. I had to get stronger. I had to get faster. Because 6'3", 220 is great for high school football, but I would have been thrown around like a rag doll in college. So I crafted a 2-a-day lifting program at that point where I'd lift with my high school coach before the chaos got too crazy. I'd maybe even do a lift in the middle of the day with him because, we had these nice schedules where my gym class was weightlifting.
Okay.
And then I would go train at another facility with folks who like were working with college athletes and working with NFL athletes and we're former NFL players. I did it because, like you said, like you don't know what you don't know, and it's often better to go and seek out the professionals who have been there and done that and seen things and can help you hone in on the skills that you are kind of rough.
Yeah. You need the guidance. It does push you. So were you training and putting this plan together before you had an offer for Lehigh? Was this in preparation too?
Yep.
Did you have your eyes on Lehigh?
At this point, I had no eyes on anything.
So you were just, I want to do college football.
Yeah.
So you're just like, let me just get ready.
It was
point blank.
It was college football or college lacrosse. Truthfully, admittedly,
right.
like I was still torn because like lacrosse, I love the sport. Like, admittedly, probably more than I love football.
No,
which is weird to say.
Wow.
It was just fun. I was playing in like summer travel leagues, like doing all sorts of fun things. Like we were Bash Brothers. That's a whole different story.
Bash Bros.
Bash Bros. But I kept toying with the idea of like, am I going to go to college and play lacrosse or play football? But I always knew like, one, I probably wasn't going to go pro in either. Pro lacrosse first was like, it's cool, but there's not a lot of money in it. So I was like, okay, whatever I do, I want to go to a school with good academia because I got to set myself up for success down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So once I started kind of like my junior year, I went very hard on training. And, the problem with playing football and lacrosse is it's different body styles. Football, like you got to be big, you got to be brutal and like a battering ram. Lacrosse, you got to be like lean and light. So, my coach would always joke, he's like, you look like a football player on the lacrosse field. I was like, because
I am, bro.
I am. I was like, maybe I hit too hard, but that's all right.
Yeah.
So I had this weird inflection where I went from like 235 to 205.
Whoa.
I was 6'3", 205, maybe like 4% body fat, like unhealthy.
Dude.
And it, again, kind of going back to the whole body image stuff, like might have had a little body image, issue going on where I was like this looks good. I got to eat less. I got to run more. And, I was like probably running more than I was lifting. And this is my junior year when like I'm starting to get on the map for colleges for football and lacrosse. And that's a big turnoff for football coaches. They're like, you're 205. and you want to play lineman.
Yeah.
Like, we have 300-pound guys who will eat you for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Too lean.
Yeah.
And how do you feel performance-wise? Like, if you can remember being that lean, like the energy difference.
Not good. My energy levels were terrible. I was not feeling myself properly. And it was, not for the lack of like food in front of me. It was just like, I had in my mind that like I wanted to be leaner, faster, and I just was not eating as much as I should have been.
Was some of that pressure just for a certain aesthetic at the time?
A bit of that, yeah, and a bit of like the lacrosse mentality of like my coach kind of drilled into my head. He was like, you can't be a football player on a lacrosse field. So I kind of was like, all right, fine, I'll transform myself into a lacrosse player.
Okay, fair. So you just had conflicting routes at the time.
Yeah. And then once I realized that like my energy levels were completely off, like I was falling asleep in the middle of the day, like I couldn't get through lifts, I couldn't get the energy to get through lifts.
Yeah.
I just kind of was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so then I doubled back down on like healthy habits of eating, healthy habits of lifting, and I skyrocketed right back to 235 right before my senior year of football. And at this point, like I was on the radar of a bunch of different schools, like Johns Hopkins, Bentley, Lehigh, Harvard, and the Naval Academy. And I was actually very set on going the Naval Academy route. I have a grandfather who served in World War II and Korean War in the Air Force. I call him an uncle, more of like a godfather type figure, who was special ops, Navy SEALs, and all, you name it. So I had a lot of like military kind of male figures in my life that I aspired to be more like. And, I ultimately didn't go that route, but those were kind of guys that I really looked up to. And that also helped me kind of form who I wanted to be as a person and the work ethic of what I wanted to strive to be. And then for me, it was, again, just doubling down on the lifting, doubling down on like, I had these college coaches tell me I had to step up my game. I had to be heavier. I had to be stronger. I had to be faster. So once I got back to that healthy weight of 235, the football coaches were like, if you want to play football, you'd be 265. So, and you got to do it in a month and a half.
Whoa.
So this was...
How'd you do that?
My senior year spring, because like this is right leading up to like what is called National Signing Day or National Letter of Intent Day. So I sat down with a nutritionist because I knew nothing about nutrition other than just like, you tell me I need to gain weight, I'm going to eat donuts and Burger King and all that stuff. I hated how that made my body feel. Low energy levels, lack of production, and also just aesthetics, always creeping in the back corner of the mind.
Yeah, I get it.
So I sat down with a nutritionist and I said, what do I need to eat and how many calories to offset like the production that I'm doing right now? And I was basically, people laugh about this, but I was basically eating like what people know as the Michael Phelps diet, where it was like between 10 to 14,000 calories a day, like 6 full meals, like protein jellos and protein bread, like things that like no human would ever want to eat.
You really were stuffing that much?
I was
down
stuffing
a day
that much.
For a month and a half? Did you continue after that? For how long of a period?
For the next 4 years.
You did that for 4 years?
I couldn't, I shit you not, I could not keep the weight on my body. It was like, so I went from 235 to 265 in a month and a half. And it was a combination of increased caloric intake and much more focused weightlifting.
Okay.
I'm talking like, you've probably seen the photos of me back then, but like,
yeah, you showed me.
My body was like twice the size of what it is now.
Yeah, very big.
Like my legs are huge, my upper body, everything. I just was dense. And again, like that's not 4% dense. That's just as much as I could get into this body and make it function at a high level. And then for me, once I got into camp at Lehigh, again, that's a completely eye-opening experience. You go from the fastest, strongest, best potential athlete on the field in high school to you're just one of everybody else. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of trying to learn everything, absorb everything, while trying to not get hurt, while trying to figure out how you're going to dine and eat now, because now you don't have like the family support there, like helping you figure out your meals. Like you got to go to dining halls, you got to go supplement the dining halls because that's not enough food. I think my first camp, I went from 265 back down to 235 in maybe like 4 or 5 days. And it was just like, I literally was withering away because I stopped eating the way I should have been. And the problem with that is like the lighter you get, the harder it is to play that position. And I was playing nose tackle at that time.
Oh, okay.
So that means like you're literally getting double teamed every play and thrown around. Like
Yeah, you gotta be like
by like grown ass men. Like,
so if you're not holding that weight, but you played that position your entire college career?
so I played nose tackle my freshman year. I was supposed to play DN, and then we had some change in needs. So my coach said, I want you to play nose tackle. So once I realized I was playing nose tackle, I was like, I need to get bigger. And so I went back from 235 back to 265, played that whole season.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I need to get bigger even yet. So then I went up to 295. And that was like a slower burn where I was like lifting twice a day, eating again 10 to 14,000 calories a day, and just like very, very focused on like a slow, steady build. And I did that for my sophomore season to play nose tackle again. Okay. And it took a toll on my body.
So let's dive in a little bit. I'm curious, like the specifics of your training style now.
Yeah.
And if you can remember, let's like break down maybe what a day would look like in the gym. Yeah. And then I want to talk about your food and like what you remember eating to have that many calories. Because I want to give people an idea of the style and the way, like your priorities of how you were training. Because it has to be a mix of, I want to get stronger, I want to move more weight, I want to gain size, but you're also still focused on speed and performance, like getting quick off the ball, right?
Right.
And then eating still in a way where you're getting that amount of calories, but it has to be also nutrient dense.
Yeah.
So that you're able to move and feel good. So let's talk with the gym first. What was that training style like primarily, the types of lifts you were doing?
Yeah. And I was very blessed. We had a phenomenal weight training staff there at Lehigh, between Eric and Ed and like everyone else that supported them. They crafted a very like focused weightlifting program that was focused on maintenance during season, but also explosiveness, and making sure that you were building all the small fibers, not just doing like, all right, I'm going to do bench and squat and deadlift.
Should we talk more isolation type movements during the season?
Yeah. Isolation, a lot of like resistance-based movements. Like we would do squats with chains on the side of the bar, or resistance bands, and we do like squats and hold them time under tension down low, and then explode up.
Nice.
Isolation, single leg movements, split squats, Bulgarians, explosive stuff where you drop the dumbbells and you're driving your knees, like all that type of stuff, while compounding it with your typical Olympic lifts, like your bench, your squat, we didn't do deadlifts in college. My coach didn't believe in that because too many people mess up their backs. So we did a lot of hang cleans, power cleans. Did a lot of like dumbbell bench press and rows, and a lot of neck exercises. So our necks were like probably out to here, like blended into the shoulder.
Let's go.
Yeah, it was great.
You got to protect. I mean, that's a big part of the game, for real.
So it was like, basically when I sat down with my weight coach, I was like, dude, I need to sustain weight. Not like, it's not even like gaining weight, it's sustain weight. And I was like, what can I do to lift twice a day? So we basically would like focus in, our morning sessions would be very kind of steady state, like Olympic lift, like bench, if we're doing chest, right? Bench, maybe some flies, dumbbell flies, incline bench, and focus on lats, whatever it might be. And then our afternoon lift will be more isolation, more chains, resistance bands, hitting the smaller fibers and focusing on like healthy building around the shoulders, the big muscle groups.
Joints.
Yeah.
Mobility,
which I didn't have a lot of, truthfully.
It's hard at that size too.
Yeah.
Especially the way that you were like packing it on. I feel like that obviously wasn't like a natural size for you. You're fighting to be there.
Yeah.
So that is tough. And then when you're off season, how did it change?
So off season, we have spring ball. So that's basically just like playing the fall, but just not playing against other teams. So you're kind of just training with the team in OTAs, organized team activities. Eventually you get to a point where your coaches can come back and be involved in stuff. And you know, it's just very focused on weightlifting, crazy cardio, which also made it difficult to keep the weight on. And then you go back into practices and you play a spring game, and then you go into summer. And summer was always like a challenge because you're kind of on your own again. Unless you stayed at Lehigh and like trained with the weight coaches, you can't really be in contact with your coaches. That's like NCAA regs. So if you weren't around your teammates, you were kind of back home. So I was back home in Jersey most of the times, like working, and trying to figure out like internships at accounting firms on top of, you know, weightlifting and maintaining weight. I did come back from that 295. I kind of told my coach, I was like, I physically cannot hold this weight. And I switched back out to defensive end, which thank God I did. I love that. Love coming off the edge and just knocking somebody out.
Yeah, it's a fun position.
And you know, 265 was a sustainable weight for my body at that time. And I had figured out exactly like my caloric intake and what I needed to do to kind of stay with that. And same for my weightlifting regimen. You know, wake up before work, lift, go to work, get work done. After work, I do a little bit of cardio and a little bit more lifting to make sure I wasn't like dropping the weight rapidly.
And when you say cardio, like what was cardio back then?
Sprints, a lot of sprints, like 10-yard sprints, 20-yard sprints, 40-yard sprints, quick dashes, explosive stuff, because that's what I needed. I needed to be very quick twitch off the ball. No like endurance, no miles. Like I was deathly allergic to anything greater than 3 miles probably. Like if somebody was like, oh, I'm going to go for a run, my mentality was like, no, I'm just moving the earth underneath me at that time. So I was very much into like sprints and you know, maybe like 100 yards would be like the max I would sprint.
Okay. Yeah, fair. Yeah. But that's what the sport needs, man. That's exactly. That's how it translates into the game. Yeah. And so your lifting is still, even in off season, does the style of lifting change a little bit? Like, is your priority a little bit different? Were you trying to put on more mass during the off season?
Absolutely. So in season is very maintenance mode. So you're not going to be pushing for max. Like you're not going to try to hit a new max.
Because you also don't want to be sore for games, obviously, right? So you're not trying to progress.
Right. Exactly. Whereas the off seasons, like you go on your like month cycles or month and a half cycles, where it's like, all right, we're going to do a 4-week or 6-week program, where now we're going to do a, you know, kind of a build up for max reps on bench, max on squat, max on power cleans.
Okay.
So it's like your typical like lifting scheme where you start out like high reps, then you go from maybe like 15, 20 reps down to 12 reps, down to 8 reps. And then as you get closer to kind of your max days, you're doing like a warm-up set of 10, then you go to 8, 4, 2, 2, 2.
Yeah, pure
1.
strength. Yeah.
Pure strength. Yeah. And those were kind of the programs that we would do for a couple months. And, you know, we would just get like jacked up and juiced up. And, you know, we'd all come back basically like you're kind of lean from spring ball because you're in maintenance mode even then. And then we come back and everybody's like barely fitting through the door frames.
Great. Incredible.
Loved it.
I was saying it the other day. I was like, that's my goal. I just don't want to fit through doorways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Doorways are not my friend.
Yeah. Oh God, it's a beautiful feeling.
It's so good.
I just watched. Oh, my bad.
Sorry, didn't see you there.
Oh, just let me move sideways. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
What was the food then? Let's walk through like a day.
Yeah.
As best as you can remember. Just give me some examples of meals here, because
somewhere between 6 to 8 eggs for breakfast, with protein bread, which I didn't know existed.
Protein bread.
Because the whole concept of gaining weight, or even technically just healthy eating, is a well-balanced diet. Everybody forgets this, but carbs are required.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to have like a healthy weight. So my goal was to eat minimally what my goal weight was in protein and try to match that with carbs. So like my goal weight 265. I wanted to have about 265 grams of protein throughout the day. Not all in one sitting. That would hurt.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. You space it out, but that's your goal.
That's my goal. So, 6 to 8 eggs. supplementing usually with egg whites because it cuts down on the fat intake. It's good to have healthy fats, but not donuts and stuff. Not a lot of them. You can still have them. And then the protein bread, maybe some leftover steak. Love steak. Sausage, whatever it might be, to jack up the protein. Then I get my lift in, and then I'd follow that up with a snack, usually a very high protein yogurt or and berries, and some more protein bread. And then by the time I get to lunch, I'm probably eating at that point I was probably eating 2 pounds of chicken, like grilled chicken, rice, more bread, whatever carb I could get my hands on, I would eat.
Okay.
And then in the middle of the day, I'd have like a protein jello or isopures were big back then, because it was basically just like 44 grams of pure protein. No idea if it was actually good for you, but
that's what you had.
It worked.
Yep.
And then what else? And back then, like college was great because you go to the dining hall and you make friends with the folks that worked at the little stations, and they just knew we were football players. So we come in as soon as they open, before any of the regular students would get there, and just load up plates and plates,
ready to feed you
of food. Like chicken finger Friday was the best. We just for lunch, I kid you not, like we would probably eat 50% of the chicken fingers that were made that day in an hour time slot between like 11:15 and 12:15 before any student showed up. And we just load up, our plates on a side table so we could keep eating.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot of protein, a lot of carbs, get some vegetables in there for fiber. And then dinner, like to the best that I could, steak, chicken, pork, leaner meats. Back then, you're living on the college diet, so you really can't get as much steak as I would like, as much steak as I like to make now. So you're just kind of getting what you can get.
Yeah, man. Tough times, Scott.
Just making it work.
Where's my tomahawk?
Where is my ribeye? But once I lived off campus and I was buying my own food, cooking my own stuff, like I incorporated more steak because I love the flavor and it's very high in protein. And, I just got bored of chicken, got bored of fish and protein.
Yeah, I have a hard time with chicken too. Did you have a hard time with like your appetite with this amount of food that you're eating?
Yeah.
So did you have tricks to basically get yourself to get these calories down?
Yeah, I would try to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And my whole goal was, at this point, I wasn't eating for the enjoyment of eating. It was eating with purpose.
It's a fuel, man.
It's a fuel.
Yeah.
So you get to the point where you're like, I don't really want to eat anymore. Eat a little bit more, and then if you don't finish, pack it up. You'll get hungry in about 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, truth.
And
honestly.
Then you bust it back out, you eat a little bit more, put it away. And by kind of spacing out, like, if I would lift, say for example, like I wake up, get a whole bunch of fuel for my lift. So I eat, lift, I'd be hungry after my lift. So I'd be refueling right after that point. So that's kind of like a second meal where I bring in that second snack, and it's not even like 9 a.m. at that point. Then I go to class and I get hungry in class. So then I kind of graze, eat some more snacks, get out of class, go watch film or meet with my coaches. I'm eating while I'm there. Go out from there, go to the training room. Now it's lunchtime. Eat a full lunch. And it's just the tips and tricks were basically like eat to the point where you feel full, not to the point where you're sick.
Yeah.
Pack it up, graze when you're hungry in 30, 45 minutes.
Fair. I mean, simple enough.
And it was just like, I know what I needed to intake on that day. So it was always trying to get that.
Yeah. It's hard to do though. You hear the struggle. Like I struggle with the food aspect too. I love food, but getting the amount of calories that you need sometimes is just tough. Like my appetite suppresses very often. Like if I ever get that place of a little bit into overtraining, or, just outside life events, you're focused on so many things. You're moving from meeting to meeting. So like even higher stress suppresses the appetite.
Yeah.
But you're still trying to get this in because when you don't, it impacts also your performance.
Absolutely.
So when you have more of that athletic kind of approach to it, you do see it more as just like a tool versus, like you said, the enjoyment of.
Yeah.
So you got to find that balance because you get to that point where you can run like that for a while, especially when you're young. You can just be disciplined and be like, I got this goal.
Yeah.
At some point it starts to shift where you got to start thinking about enjoyment for sustainability, or else you end up crashing.
100%.
But so I want to fast forward a little bit with you now. So we get into college. You got your team lifts. You're an absolute monster. You're huge. You're enormous. And now we're going from college into the working world with the rest of us. And we're out here. Yeah. We're a PWC. Yep. Right? You've been there your entire career?
Been there my entire career. Almost left a couple of times, but great mentors who helped walk me through that, and folks that I consider very near and dear. So I've been there for almost a decade now.
That's incredible. You don't see that often these days. So you've been there for quite some time. You got this great career there. And so you got a whole set of different responsibilities, and going from a very structured environment with your training. This is a battle that I hear all the time with whether you were a professional athlete, a collegiate athlete, or someone that had structure and team training. So you did not have to think about this stuff. Right. You had people designing workouts for you. You had people that you were lifting with. You had the times, you had the coaches, you had the equipment, you had the spotters, you had people to talk about with this stuff. Yep. You had all the support in the world. Like I've talked with my brother about this, who cheered at Kentucky, and he was talking about that big difference too. Those first 2 years, 3 years away in the real world is like relearning what your relationship to training is, what my groove is supposed to be, how do I want to lift. So what was that experience like for you? Did you experience a low? Did you kind of dip in your training and step away from it at the time? And
absolutely.
What was that journey?
I could not say that better myself. For me, it was, after my senior season, like I was beat up. Like I needed my second surgery on my shoulder at that point. I'd torn my MCL in the second week of training camp in my senior season. So I was like just surviving that last season and just trying to, enjoy every moment of it. But also like I was held together by medical tape, Novocaine or whatever injections they were putting in there, cortisone, and pain meds at the time. So I was hurting. So I came out of that. I knew I wanted to lose weight to get into a healthier body type and also to stop hurting. And I knew I had to get surgery. So then I did all that. And then I just lost my passion for lifting because I had nobody around me. I was doing it by myself. It was quiet. And I think, silence is deafening. You get to the point where you're like, I've got no teammates to cheer me on or push me when I'm struggling. And you've got two choices when you're struggling underneath that bar. You could give up, call it a day, or you could dig deep and push harder. And at that time, I gave up. I gave up my passion for lifting. I gave up my passion for, cardio. And I just kind of poured 110% of myself into work, which was terrible.
Why?
I became somebody who I did not want to be. I was consumed with work to the point where like became very stressed out at things that you just don't need to be stressed out about. I was not like the person I wanted to be. I wasn't like that kind and happy-go-lucky type guy, very positive, because I wasn't filling my cup up. I completely drained my cup. And it wasn't until actually I kind of met my now wife, Jenna, who was a former Team USA figure skater, synchronized skater. We were both kind of searching for like that accountability partner, that teammate. Because we both went from organized, sports at a very high level competitively to nothingness and doing it on your own. And that's just isolating. For everyone else who doesn't have that competitive athletic background, like you're grinding it out on your own as it is already. And that's tough. It's tough. We just now learned that ourselves coming out of those things. And, we kind of did our best to get through that, but we lost our way and work will take everything that you're willing to give to it. And unless you set healthy boundaries, and I didn't learn that for a couple of years, unless you set healthy boundaries, it'll take until there's nothing to take. And that's not a sign of PwC. That's not a sign of like any employer out there. That's just who you are in your DNA.
That's just true across the board.
Yes.
just as a professional, no matter
Exactly.
what you're doing.
Exactly. And it's up to you to kind of figure out those healthy boundaries and saying like, what is it that I need to fill up my cup? So the transition really kind of happened when like Jenna, myself, and a group of friends at PwC were like, hey, we're going to happy hours every freaking Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, playing softball and like just destroying our bodies.
Yeah.
It's fun when you're 21, 22, but you kind of wake up and you're like, I feel gross. I feel off. So then, that's kind of when we jumped into berries. That scratched an itch that kind of needed us to like thrust us back into the space. But it was really finding Tone House that really kind of like reinvigorated the love of working out for both Jenna and myself. And, I will say Jenna and myself for a lot of these things because she is my teammate through a lot of this. And she pushed me to kind of want to be the better version of myself again and go through that fitness journey again. And then, ultimately finding our way back into the gyms and weightlifting. And, I'll fast forward even like, I think it was until like right before COVID, like you and I had just met and we were talking about weightlifting a lot more and like just better training where like we weren't training just cardio 4 or 5 times a week. Like, we were getting back into the lifting and I was like, wait, I forgot how much I love this. And I forgot how much it's needed to balance your training styles. For me, balance came through mixing in weightlifting with mixing in cardio. For some people, it's like yoga, mobility, whatever it may be, like finding your training style.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, I need to lift to be what I want to be and to be healthier and stronger and faster. And it just made me a better athlete. And it also cleared my head. And that was like where I would go as my solitude, my sanctuary, to clear out all the noise. To if I was having a bad day at work or a bad day personally, whatever it was, like that was a great place for me to go to just like silence the noise.
Let it out, man.
Let it out. So once we kind of found Tone House and once we've kind of refound the gym, that kind of transformed my training style into what it is to this day. And now what I do for all of my teams, 10 years into my career, I champion, we call it be well, work well. I kind of joke with a lot of people nowadays. Corporate world has a great way of tricking you into thinking that you need to incorporate life into work. When you speak to folks that are outside of the States, you realize their core values are life and work fits into life, not the other way around. So what I tell everyone, I was like, I'm not telling you to work less or to be lazy at work. I'm telling you to work smarter and set boundaries and focus on what you need. If it's working out, like communicate that. Tell your teams, hey, like I'm a morning person, so I'm going to go work out in the morning and I'm going to be at work at this time. And if I need to take a walk at some point, just communicate it. If you're a night person, same thing goes for that. So I'm very, very vocal at PwC where I'm to the point where like I have my calendar and people can see my calendar. I have my workouts on my calendar. I have time to take lunch for me. I have time to take a walk to clear my head. Because otherwise you could literally just jump in and you'd be on calls all day long or whatever it might be. And you're just locked in. You need some time for you to recharge.
You do. Like to your point, it's just going to like take if you don't set the boundaries up beforehand, if you're trying to do it during that day, it's usually not going to work.
Right.
It's got to be some kind of a schedule that you've already crafted.
Yep.
Which will take time. It's a self-awareness game too.
Absolutely.
Right? Like what actually works for you, what time of day and all that. But the boundaries are important and you've been so consistent in the entire time that I've known you. I've always witnessed because Scott and I met when I was a coach at Tone House, so I would always see him come in at very specific times. You had your schedule. It was usually in the mornings, but you'd also lift in the evenings. You would have certain nights that you would come in and lift. I know you did some personal training sessions too, where you and Jenna would go lift outside of Tone House. You had your group aspect where I think you socialized too. You'd be with your guys, you would with your friends, so you would have that time. Then you would have your separate time where I think was more goal specific. Yep. But everything seemed scheduled and you were just so regimented.
Yeah.
So what is it about the mornings for you that keeps you like on that schedule? Like why is that so important?
Yeah. I think for us, the training style, everything's done with intent. So for us, it was like you're saying, like don't go at it in a chaotic manner and just be like, well, I'm going to do a night here, a morning there, middle of the day there. Like it was, okay, I know my energy levels and I know how I respond to certain things. So for me, it was like, I come into work feeling better if I do a morning workout. My energy levels are just peaking and I'm just a, happier, lighter person. And then I knew that on certain days, like maybe I just needed to sleep in. So like Mondays, I try to train at night. Tuesdays, I try to train at night. But Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm locked in the mornings. And I'm like, I'm either doing a 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. workout. And that's my routine because it also helps for my body kind of understanding like, hey, like we wake up, we do this, we put in the work, and then we go about our day.
Yeah.
And versus like putting your body through the ringer because it's always guessing like, am I in fight or flight mode?
Yeah, the consistency is very important.
Yeah.
With the style, it matches.
Right.
Wednesday is this type of session.
Right.
Friday's this type of session, etc.
And my colleagues to this day are like, I don't understand, because it's like, this is not to put any negative stigmatism towards accounting as an industry, but like accounting works a lot. And my colleagues always joke like, I don't know how you do this profession and work out and do all this stuff.
Right.
And I say to them, well, it's about finding balance and finding what's important to you. For some people, it's having dinner with their family. For me, it's like I work out a lot with Jenna because she's my partner, my wife, my teammate. It's time for us to connect without saying a whole lot because when you're lifting or running or working out, you're not saying a whole lot.
Yeah.
Usually gasping for air.
Yeah.
But it's a time to be together in a space and pushing each other, witnessing each other struggle and grow through things. And it helps us fill our cup back up, kind of back to that mantra. Like,
yeah, dude,
if you're operating at that empty cup level, you're not going to be able to give 100% to anything that you do. And for me, it was like, all right, like we love working out. That's our passion. We love cooking together too. So, that's another one of our passions. And that's how we fill the cup up. And then I go back to doing what I need to do. For me, again, doing the mornings, going to take care of work after that, like that's what I needed. That's what I need on a kind of continual basis.
Right. Yeah. You found a really healthy groove. It's cool to witness because like I see, you can see how intentional it is with what you do because you do work very hard. And I know you put in the hours. There's busier seasons than others in accounting, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so you have these very high demanding months, but you still stick to a schedule. You still make this stuff happen. And it's the difference between if you were just reliant on if my schedule was more opened up, I can now work out during these times versus for you, it is a non-negotiable.
No, it's a non-negotiable because again, going back to like who I am when I break from habit.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
Because this is bigger than why you're sticking to the routine. So you see this as a translation to like just who you are as a man?
As a man, as a partner, as a colleague, as a person. Like, I always wholeheartedly believe in, what's up, Lena?
Come on, Lena, get up here.
Up here.
There she goes.
Yeah. You're looking for a little scratch, huh?
There's the dog.
So like the working out for me, like going back to when I started at PwC, when I wasn't working, like I was always on edge and I'm somebody like, me, like a lot of shit could be going on around me and I'm very even keel. Like I pride myself on like trying to be very even keel, not allowing a whole lot to like spike my
like unfazed.
Yeah. I try to be unfazed. I try not to get like too hyper stimulated by something. Happy of course, but not like stressed and angry about things. So I found even like in our busier seasons with work, when I'm working and getting maybe 2-3 hours of sleep a night, it was still really, really important for me to get up and stick to those habits. And I found it was easier, especially in a place like Tone House. Like it's a team-based workout.
Yeah.
Where you show up and like you feel like you have to be accountable for showing up and putting the work in because you've got 10 other, 20 other people in that class showing up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., working hard and coming with positive attitude. So even, like this week, like I worked late going into a Friday. We took 5 a.m. I probably got 3 or 4 hours of sleep, if that. Still about waking up, showing up and giving it 100% of what I got. And I kid you not, like I felt so much better later that day because I did that. And if I didn't do that, I would feel off. and I would feel out of orbit. I would feel like more stressed or not have the same energy levels to attack my day after that. And I've also noticed that like translates to like personal relationships, like friends, even, with Jenna or with anybody's significant other. Like when I work out, like I'm able to kind of get myself to where I want to be on an energy level so that I can be open and receptive to those relationships and not being like, I have too much on my plate with work and this and this and this, and I can't take this on at the same point. Like by introducing healthy habits with working out and finding that kind of Zen mode, I'm able to incorporate more things in a much healthier manner. So,
and I see you as someone that is very present. Like when you're in a room, I feel like you are there when you're with Jenna, when you're cooking, that you are focused on it. I think sometimes we look at someone that is able to do that and you just think that it's been automatic. That's how you're wired. That's what you do. But I have a feeling that has been intentional with you.
Yeah.
So how did you cultivate that? How do you teach yourself over time to be more present in these moments that you have with family, with working out, with work, etc.?
Yeah. I think I take a lot of that from my grandfather, who was probably one of like the more pivotal male figures in my life. It's funny. I was born late and my parents are older. So I'm one of 5 for my dad. I'm my mom's first. So he divorced, married my mom, had me. So I was late in the family. Like my siblings were 20 years older than me, 10 years older than me. So my grandfather and I maybe had 20 years crossover of my life. So he was, 70s when I was 10. And what I always noticed with him was he was very intentional and very present. And he also enjoyed the simple things. And I just was like, that's somebody that I want to be around. And he also was like the type of person that would always leave the room and people would be happier because he would go out of his way to like listen to them, talk to them, get to know what's going on with them. So I always kind of try to ground myself in that and thinking about like, what energy would I want, and trying to be present and attentive, and not, giving into the 1,000,001 distractions that we can have. Like you could be looking at your phone constantly, emails, text, social media. But, I think that's all just noise. Like when you're with a group of friends or when you're with your significant other or you're cooking a meal, like it's a nice time to just block all that out and focus on the moment ahead of you. So I try to do that kind of I'm just very intentional about it. I try to like, for example, like Tina, you, Jenna, and myself, we have dinners. Like I will probably put my phone away because I don't even want to have the desire to look at it. I just want to be there in the moment, like enjoying our dinner, cooking steak, most likely.
Yeah. 9 out of 10 times it's been steak.
To all my friends who come over
steak
for dinner.
tartare.
Steak. Oh God. Yeah. So, but it's just very intentional about sticking to that and being present because, I just think it's like, if you don't, you're also training your brain to have, I don't want to call it ADHD, but you're training your brain to not be able to focus on any single one thing.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you're never giving something 100%.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it creates more anxiety too.
Yeah.
Because you're living somewhere else. And we're living in such a time, dude. You're getting your attention pulled every moment of the day, especially when you pick up your phone. You're getting pulled to targeted ads, emails, text messages, obviously social media, like all these different things. Which can be fine, but again, it's what you said before. It's putting those barriers in place, or like those, kind of those requirements for your time, so you know where to be.
Absolutely. But
it allows you to give more to yourself. It allows you to deepen, and it creates more of a peace of mind too.
Yeah.
Because if you feel that battle, like I have certainly felt that. It's been something I've been trying to do myself a little bit more, of just anchoring myself more into that moment. Because I get, you think so much about different work or projects or different ideas floating around, which can be good to brainstorm and whatnot. But, there's a time to just pull yourself into the moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know you and I've talked about this too. Like, I think you're more of like the introverted side. I told you once I was an introvert and you laughed at me. I'm definitely an extrovert.
It's like bullshit.
I was an introvert at some point in my life, and then I became an extrovert. But you know, I do have like introvert tendencies at times. Like when you're talking about like silencing the noise, for example, like you know, when you're working, you're thinking about those projects, thinking about all those things. Like one of the things that I do, you know, you call it journaling. I just call it like creating structure around all the million things that are running through my head so that I could turn that switch off.
How do you do that? Like, what's your practice?
I basically journal in very bullet point format.
Oh, so you're just doing like a brain dump.
Brain dump.
We can call it whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I really, that's what it is. It's just taking whatever is in your head,
Yep.
organizing it.
Exactly. And then I also have this practice that I learned, and I don't meditate. I'll put that out there. What I'm about to say, don't like think that I'm like, oh yeah, I meditate 15 minutes a day. Like, I think that's a great thing to do if you're doing it. But my brain doesn't shut off that way. But one of the things that one of my coaches taught me at one point, he says, imagine you're sitting in the middle of a stream on a rock and you have an idea. Take that idea, put it in the stream, watch it flow down the stream away from you. And so a lot of times when there's too much noise going on around me, I try to do that and I just like let it drift away from me, do some, you know, deep breathing and watch my heart rate come back down. And I'm very much a believer of like, if, you know, these smartwatches are great. You can check your resting heart rate.
Yeah.
Very much a believer if my resting heart rate is very low for that day, I've done a good job of staying calm. And even in a corporate setting, like I've noticed like this thing, I've set it up for, you know, notifications. I've noticed when a meeting gets really tense, my heart rate starts to accelerate. And it's notified me. And I've actually made my colleagues stop the meeting, stand up, go for a walk, take a deep breath, maybe get a coffee, whatever it may be, because I love my espresso.
Yep.
But to de-escalate, because I just don't think like you get anywhere productive when you're in that fight or flight mode. You got to kind of de-escalate and take that tension out of the room and focus on the simple stuff at hand and like taking all that noise, blocking it out.
Yeah, it becomes, that's another skill. Yeah. And I'm assuming you weren't always this way, creating this calmness.
No.
Did you get a little hyped? Did you used to get a little?
Oh yeah. That took a lot of practice. I think it took a lot of practice and a lot of like introspection, looking in and kind of being like I was way too overstimulated. Like even in college, like, you know, I'm going to class, I have training, football, film, study, CPA, going out with friends, doing all that stuff. And you're like, there's not enough hours in the day for this. And you're just overstimulating yourself to the point where you're like, and I'm worn down again. And, you know, at 20 years old, that's okay.
Yeah.
At 30 years old, it's a different ball game. So, you know, I think it was a lot of practice and a lot of kind of observing like what works for me and then simplifying, because like you said, there's just so much stuff out there, so many things that you can engage with, so many things that you can do, that will cause overstimulation and also cause anxiety. And you kind of have to sit there and say, like, what are those things that are peak stimulators, peak anxiety creators for me? And how do I simplify? How do I remove those things or reduce them? And how do I be more present as a result?
Yeah. It kind of comes down to like a realization too, of just understanding like being in that state of mind doesn't serve you at all. Because you're going to be presented problems. Yeah. Right. And I used to, when I was younger, I would get a lot of like anxiousness, or a big sense of urgency that everything was a priority. I had to get everything done immediately and at the highest level possible. And I think when you're younger too, you have like this just energy running through you where you just get stuff done. I would work so late because you just think that's what you're supposed to do and you have the energy to do it. Yeah. But you start to realize, I was like, this stuff, me being in that heightened state, it's just like training. If I overtrain, then my session tomorrow is going to be bad. And I want to have more of a consistent, kind of smooth, even burn. Right. Going back to what your earlier point was. Right. And once you realize these problems are going to be persistent, like life is nothing but some type of a challenge, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your situation is. So having more of a calmness of mind to be able to handle things in a calm state so that you can handle them more effectively too, and not emotionally. Right. Which is leading you to better long-term results.
Precisely.
And I've always admired people. Like we got a friend of ours that I know we both really admired, Doc. We call him Doc, James Hale. The dude is just, what I have loved about that dude, observing that guy, is that, married, he's got kids, he is a doctor, he is, getting pulled in all these different directions. But when you see him, he just appears to have just a very nice calmness and also a great presence about him.
Yes.
Just unfazed. And when you see that type of thing where I look at my life and I'm like, all right, so he has much more going on than I do with family obligations and even his career, right? Being a spinal surgeon.
Yeah.
That you're like, if he can do this, surely I can create a sense of calmness too when I'm attacking whatever I'm dealing with.
And the first thing he would say to you is, Joe, we all have a bunch of shit going on in our lives. It's not an apples to apples comparison. Like, you've just got to focus on what's going on around you. He's just like, he's the type of guy who's like, just because I'm doing this, it's not more complex or harder than what you've got going on. He's the type of guy who's like, listen, like, we all got our stuff. We all got to deal with it. And we got to deal with it in a way that we can be the best version of ourselves going out. And I think that's, parlaying to another thing for me is like surrounding yourself with the people that you aspire to be like.
Yeah.
Like, I think our friend group, like, it's very, like, I don't want to call it intentional, but it was natural. Like, it was very natural because a lot of us gravitated to each other because we have that same energy.
Yeah.
Like, we all want to find other people who are going to push us to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And our partners and our friends. I think our collective group of guys and the ladies included, but collective group of guys, like, they're guys who are real. We'll get down to like the brass tacks and like the, nitty gritty of like, man, this shit's tough, but they'll also tell you like, put your boots on. It's time to go to work.
Yeah, dude.
And it's time to like dig yourself out of that trench and come out a better man for that.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's why I love our friend group. Cause it's like, you've got a whole bunch of accountability partners.
Yeah. It's no bullshit and it's supportive at the same time.
Yeah.
It strikes a balance.
Right.
We're not lying to each other.
And I think that's what's like, for folks, for guys, for families, even for ladies, right? Like, families that are raising kids, like, that's kind of what, like, I want to raise my kids around, like our future kids, around is that environment where it's like, it takes a village to raise a family, and knowing that like you have that village to support you around, or to support around you, that you can lean on them, that you can, have them to help you with something. But also to have a number of different role models to kind of shape their lives, and also to shape even yours. Because like I've said, like, and like you said, there's times in our lives where we've gotten off the track, and it's hard to get back onto like the lifting track, or hard to get back onto the track that you want to go professionally.
Yep.
And unless you have people that you're looking up to and then looking, kind of trying to shape yourself after, it's hard to do that in isolation. So I always tell people, like, don't go at it alone. Like, build yourself a village or a community of people that you aspire to be like, and use that as your inspiration.
I think it comes down, it starts to become like the ultimate hack in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do get very introspective. This is my, I don't know, gift and curse is like when I'm going through something, I get very quiet and internal. And like, so I do self-isolate.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay, like in balance, like I need to reflect sometimes. It's just like how I cope.
Yeah.
But you get to a point where it's detrimental too.
Yeah.
Where I need to be in an environment to get inspired and get kind of re-energized.
Yep.
And instead of just thinking about what I need to do, because you can just think and like nothing's getting done. So you just like kind of drill yourself down into a deeper hole.
Yep.
It's like I need to, for me, get rid of that heaviness.
Yeah.
And what helps me do that is just being in the environment of people that are just performing at this like crazy high level. And you stop thinking. For me, it just, I don't have to think now.
Right.
I'm just automatic.
Right.
That's what I always loved when we were training at Tone House, was just you had this spirit of people that were just the standard of work was just up here. Yeah. It was high. It was a high bar. And that was always what it was. You didn't have to talk about it. There was just an understanding that this is our level of work.
Yep.
We do this every day. You don't have to be at your best every day, but this is where we're going to be mentally.
Yeah.
We're not going to give up. We're not going to quit. We're going to support each other. You didn't even have to talk about things.
Right.
It was just done. And you walk into other rooms and you know that the standard of work is just much lower.
Yes.
And you can feel that. And whenever I'm in a room like that, it is just so, I hate the feeling, dude. Because you can feel this energy change where excuses are acceptable.
Yep.
You kind of accept a lower bar of performance, and people go, that's okay, that's all you have. And I'm like, it's not all I have. Like, I need you to help me reach this, right? And you stay in that space, man. It just puts you. This is why training at the end of the day is such a non-negotiable, because it is so much bigger at this point in our lives beyond an aesthetic.
Yeah.
It is a mental component. It's keeping those standards completely high. It's surrounding yourself with the type of people that you want to be around. You cultivate that environment. It translates big time.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, I once heard like a Navy SEAL give a speech at University of Texas, their graduation. And he talked about training the brain to think about accomplishments throughout the day, because the loudest voice out there is your own, the one inside your head telling you you're not doing that great. You're not doing as well as you want. Like, that voice is hard to silence. But how do you combat that? One, he said, start your day off with a little victory. Make your bed.
Yeah.
Like, I have done that for
great
years.
talk.
Great talk. Hey. Make your bed. For us, like, same thing with the lifting, right? Like, that's doing something where you put yourself in an uncomfortable position, or a position where you could fail, and you're putting yourself through something hard to kind of say to yourself, like, I've now accomplished something that I want to accomplish, and I've pushed myself. Another win for the brain. So you're building these little like Lego blocks of this mental fortitude on a daily basis. And, I think that's another reason why, like, I firmly believe in training and incorporating it into the lifestyle. And, I go and take this to my team members at PwC. And I say, listen, it works for me. It doesn't have to work for you. But find those things that are those mental fortitude, those building blocks that set you up to be successful at work and to be successful outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like, we kind of went through that whole participation trophy era where everyone's got an excuse, like, sorry, I can't do that because I never learned how to do that. And I'm like, nothing eats me up more than like the cop out and being like, well, you could just do it because you know how to do it. I'm like, no. Put your bootstraps on, come to work, learn, do it, no excuses. So I try to instill that into my team. I'm like, listen, like, I can't say some of these things and outright. Like, my coach used to say, like, excuses are like assholes. Everyone has them and they all stink. I would love to say that in the
that's the back of the day shit. Yeah, but it got you going.
It got me going. So now I kind of deliver that in a different manner where I'm telling all my folks that, like, I work with, like, our new hires, I'm responsible for a lot of people, right? I tell them, like, listen, like, I'm hearing reasons why not. I want to hear reasons why yes. And come back to me with that.
Yeah.
And I've seen a very large shift in folks in the workforce where, like, when they hear that messaging, they build that self-confidence and they go back and they say, oh, I can try this. And it's okay for me to fail, but I'm going to fail fast and I'm going to learn from that.
Yeah. Fail fast.
Yeah.
Big lesson right there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like, there's two modems, right? People are afraid of failure, so they just don't try.
Yep.
Three modems. People fail continuously, like banging your head into the wall and saying, like, it hurts. It's like, well, yes, it will hurt if you bang your head into the wall. So maybe try something different, try a different approach. And that's the third one, the fail fast mentality, where it's like, okay, that really hurt running into the wall. Is there another way around this? And I'm using a physical metaphor for this. It could be like a mental barrier. But for me, it's like, okay, you've tried this, learn from it quickly, learn what didn't work.
Yep.
And pivot.
Yes.
And, I incorporate that into kind of every aspect of my life. And kind of saying, like, all right, like, I tried. Now I'm going to try something different.
Yep.
But I'm not going to give up.
Yeah.
Especially if I think it's like the right thing to do or the right, direction that we need to go in. And that's one of the reasons why I think I've been successful in my career. I didn't take no for an answer when I, in my gut, felt something was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a big one, man.
Yeah.
Such a huge lesson, because it's like you can do the avoidance or you can, like, go through.
Yeah.
And going through is where all the answers are. And I struggled with this big time. I'd had a very limiting barrier mentally to what failure was when I was younger.
Yeah.
I had a pretty big thing in my head with my value being tied to my performance. That's how I just created this association as a kid growing up. And so when I got into sales, I was very scared to make certain calls or to go into meetings looking foolish. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm like 25. I'm like, of course I don't know everything that I'm doing. And I had a mentor at the time who was our SVP, and he said to me those exact words. He was like, fail fast. Yeah. Let's go through it quickly. We just got this new sales training done, and we had these new strategies that they were like teaching us and grooming us for. And I was like, Tom, I'm going into this meeting and I don't know how I should attack it. And he's like, Joe, we're going to be doing this for the next, for years. Yeah. And we got this new strategy. He's like, try it and fail. Yeah. Try it and fail. And I was hearing it from a leader, from senior leadership, telling me to go in there and bomb. Yeah. It takes a pressure off of like, okay, let me go in there. And as soon as you do that, I did the same thing with like improv comedy when I was getting away from sales, and I was kind of transitioning what I like do now, essentially get into commercials. I was like learning improv comedy. I would go into these auditions, and the first ones, I was so fucking nervous, dude. I go in there and they give me this script. It's improv, and I just bomb the shit out of it. And I remember trying to do what I thought they wanted me to do. Right. That was my headspace. And I sucked. And I just got into my car and I cried. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It was so bad. But that was a pivotal moment because I remember feeling like, dude, this is you trying to do what everybody else wants you to do, and it didn't work. Right. And you had this fear of failure, and you wanting to do this in a way that pleases everybody, and that still allowed you to fail, even though you had the fear of failing and trying to avoid. So if that's not a successful strategy, you might as well just do it naturally. Yeah. And it's a corrective way of learning. You feel something, you fail, it doesn't feel great, so you naturally adjust because you got data, you collected it, and you just go in. So you start to see the process objectively, and you separate it. It doesn't have something to do with your worth. Right. It's just a learning. I got more information, adjust the next time. Sleep on it, let it become a part of your subconscious, adjust. Yep. Adjust. That is the learning process for any damn thing. Anything. And when you see it like that, dude. Oh,
it's enlightening. It's like the light bulb effect goes off in your head. You know, and kind of like to parlay with that too, like fear of failure, fear of public speaking. Fear of public speaking is actually one of the largest fears, more than death. Yep. I will admit this. I had a colossal fear of public speaking. And some people might be like, that doesn't make any sense because when you play in college football, you play in front of tens of thousands, if not more people. And I was like, well, that was different. And they're like, how is that different? I was like, well, I'm not standing up there giving a speech to you. I'm doing what I feel.
And it's not all eyes on you, right? And your word.
Right, precisely. You've got a whole bunch of things going on, teammates, et cetera.
Yep.
So for me, it was like, all right, I need to fail fast in this. Because every time I was given a group project or presentation or something like that, I was sweating so much. You know, I sweat a lot naturally. I'm probably sweating right now. I'm sweating thinking about sweating. But I get real bright red in the face. Like even something like this, I would be like really nervous. My hands would be shaking. Like I'd be, just typical signs of like, I can't do a public speaking. I can't do anything like that. Yeah. So I said, I need to fail. So I took a public speaking class in college. And I just continuously said, I'm going to put myself out there. Every teaching opportunity I got at PwC, I was like, I'll do it. Taught in front of a couple hundred people, a couple thousand people. Next thing you know, I'm giving like a firm-wide training. And I just was like, I need to embrace being uncomfortable because that's what's going to help me grow. And I will learn from my failures. Like one time I got up and gave a presentation, and guess what? The fear came sinking back in. And what did I do? I got sweaty, I got hot, and I got real nervous. And I forgot what I was going to say. And then one of my buddies who was up there, again, having accountability partner, he knew these signs in me. He just kind of cracked a joke. And I was like, wait a second. This is not meant to be that serious. Like we could make fun of ourselves. So I just cracked a joke about myself. And I was like, oh, yep. I just forgot what I was talking about because this is very intimidating talking in front of all these people. And everyone was like, I can relate. And that was that enlightening light bulb effect where I was like, listen, like, don't take yourself too seriously. Mm-hmm. Just try. Just try being uncomfortable and you will grow and you will learn and you'll be a better person for that.
Yeah. And connect to humanity.
Yeah.
the human aspect of things is like we all know that feeling, we all know that sensation, and the right people are going to understand and have empathy with it. Like just
1000%.
Yeah. It's a huge. I got one more question for you, Scott. I'm curious about this because like you also see you obviously as this person that's very into self-development, just improvement, right? Just always kind of raising the bar as you learn something, you want to evolve.
Yep.
And I bring that up because it might seem like, okay, bye, Lena. It might seem like something that is common. Like, yeah, we all want to get better, but it's really not. Like I've seen so many people through my life that they improve to a certain point and then they kind of stay in a spot.
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay. I've never related to that. I've always seen phases of life, like how I act in college is obviously going to be different. When I was first in my career, I remember being in Charlotte, North Carolina, and realizing like, hey, I got to change some things about how I go about my day, how I carry myself if I want to get to an elevated space. And that's always been the theme. Yeah. I'm here now, but now in 10 years, who do I want to become?
Right.
I never want to be stagnant. But there's a balance that you got to strike with this.
Yes.
Of growth and kind of like this self-love.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people see them as something that you can't do at the same time.
Right.
And I'm curious how you find that balance and what it is that inspires you to continue to grow in your later years. Mm-hmm. Like, where's your head at?
Yeah, I think that's a very profound question. And it's like, for me, I've always kind of seen it as like stagnation is the death of man or death of human. Like, if you ever get to a point where you're like not growing or learning, like, what's next? And, you know, for me, I had an inflection point in my career where I actually sat down with one of my partners and I was like, I've stagnated. I need to completely change what I'm doing. And, you know, having a role model in a professional setting to be able to have that conversation and say like, I need to completely change this. And for me, that, you know, they listened and they helped me recraft what I was doing, retool, and help me continue pursuing my passion for learning and growing, and help me, you know, put myself in uncomfortable situations where I was going to be bettering myself or bettering my teams. And then outside of that too, like, one of my big passions right now is cooking, and cooking with Jenna, and cooking for friends, cooking with friends. It's, you know, like you said, it's like you don't want to be too critical on yourself. Like, I know I can always improve. So you want to enjoy the moments and say like, wow, that was a bomb meal, or like, that was pretty sick. You know, like I'll bring up steak. Like, I cooked the shit out of that steak. You know, but you know, for me, it's like you've got to have that like fire in your belly where you want to continue to learn. And, you know, I always think about it like there's one resource on this planet that you can never get more of. That's time. And what you do with that time, and how you spend that time, and the memories that you create with your friends, the people around you, that's what you're going to leave behind, your legacy. Not how much you worked, not how much steak you consumed, although I would like to break that record.
That's up there, though.
It's up there. But, you know, for me, it's like I want to enjoy life to its fullest. And to do that, I want to continue learning. I want to learn how to cook different styles of food. I want to learn how to cook better, cook as a family. I want to learn different things about history, or, you know, different ways of lifting. And like right now, like I've changed my lifting style to be more about mobility, because I could lift the world, but I want to have longevity. Yeah. I want to be able to perform in a different way. Yeah. Shout out Kaylee, got me finally below the parallel line on the squat.
Huge.
And I'm actually getting stronger, which is funny, because when you focus on something that, you know, like in the brain, you're like, I need to lift more to get stronger. It's like, well, what if you did it right? Then you get stronger. So it's like constantly pushing yourself, but putting yourself in a position where you're learning something and giving yourself self-love and recognizing like, oh, wow, I just made strides towards my goal. And I think, you know, that's to your point, like look out 6 months, 3 months, even, you know, a couple of years, write down what your goals are and talk to yourself in your head. And if you have an accountability partner, talk it through with them. But talk like, what do you want to do for you in 3 months, 6 months, a year? What do you want to do as a team, or as, you know, with you and your wife, or like you and Tina, I'm sure, like sit down and like talk about like, what is it that you guys want to accomplish in X amount of time? And make it tangible goals. Don't make it like something outlandish, like, oh, I want to be a billionaire. A lot of people want to be a billionaire, but like, how do you start building the building blocks to get to your goals? And how do you make them achievable, attainable? Because again, this goes back to that speech I was talking about, the Navy SEAL. If you build insurmountable goals that you can't run through the wall to get through, you're going to abandon that course. And you're going to feel like, man, I'm failing every day and I'm just down on myself, and you're not giving yourself self-love. You've got to build those little things that help you recognize, man, I just accomplished this. I'm on the right path towards where I want to grow. And that path can change in many different directions over time, of course, but like it's having that ability to kind of say like, I took that little building block, built it on top, and I'm increasing my mental fortitude, and I'm getting better and moving towards my goals.
Yeah. It's amazing when you start, we're so focused on the big things.
Yeah.
Cause they're flashy, they're exciting,
Yes.
they're extravagant goals, and I get it. It's needed, but you certainly learn, and I have felt that the magic is really in the details.
Yes.
It's in the smaller things. And to your point, in the gym, there's such it's a metaphor for everything. The big goal is like the big weight, and you think if I just lift more, I'm going to get stronger. And it's like, to a point, but you get to a point where, and this is just a training lesson, you can only lift so much weight. You are a human being, so you will tap out.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you, you will. So there's ways to improve, and that's in those little details. It's tempo, it's range of motion, it's paying attention, slowing down, reducing the weight actually gets you stronger. And so I think about that same stuff with attacking life, that waking up and just doing the things in your head that you say that you're going to do. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
And so if you avoid those tasks, as you mentioned, making your bed, that it's not just about making the bed. It's the fact that you said, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
And so you just do it. And when you don't do it, you have this lingering feeling of, I just avoided.
Right.
And like, let's be direct. You kind of feel like a piece of shit.
Oh yeah.
You're like, I said I was going to do this. I didn't. You walk away from it. And then that feeling starts to compound.
Mm-hmm. Everything with purpose and intent.
Yeah.
If you attack everything with purpose and intent and you accomplish your goals, you won't have that feeling creeping into the back corner of your mind telling you, hey, you suck. Because there's nothing worse than that inner monologue where you're telling yourself, man, you suck today.
Yeah.
You are not the best version of yourself today. There's no one that could, like, if somebody else is telling you, like Joe, if I walked in the room and said, hey, you suck, you could walk out of the room. You don't have to listen to that. But if you're telling yourself that, you can't walk away from that. That's in your head. That person goes with you every day, every moment. So you got to find a way to silence that and have your inner monologue be something that's giving yourself self-love, keeping yourself accountable, but giving yourself self-love.
Yeah. Small action, man.
Small action.
Let's end on that note. This is a beautiful talk, Scott. Congratulations on your first podcast.
Thanks. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that one.
I enjoyed it thoroughly, man. This is beautiful.
Likewise.
Now we're going to go celebrate with an Irish breakfast.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's do it.
Calorie intake.
Blood sausage, buddy. I need it, man. It's one of my favorite meals.
I'm
An
excited.
Irish breakfast, and it's been probably like 6 years since I've had a real one. Yeah,
Really?
dude. Yeah, it's been a minute.
Wow. Does this restaurant know what's about to hit them?
No.
Okay. They might be closed for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they just opened up at 11.
Oh.
We got fresh inventory right now.
Bellies are rumbling.
Let's clean them up, dude. Yo, Scott,
Let's
thanks
go.
again, man.
Of course.
Appreciate you.
Love you, brother.
Later, guys.